Welcome to Cine Series Recap. When he opens his eyes, Nate's suspended from an open aircraft along with a row of cargo crates. He manages to get back inside the plane after fighting off many soldiers by making his way up, but as soon as he does, a red vehicle throws him back out. A hand saves him as he is about to fall to his death, which is similar to a brief incident Nate had as a little kid. When little Nate and his elder brother Sam broke into a Boston museum 15 years earlier, Nate nearly fell out of the window if Sam hadn't caught him. In order to use a map created after the Magellan voyage to locate an ancient artifact, the orphaned brothers are searching for it. Sadly, Sam sets off the alarm as soon as he tries to pick the lock, leading to their arrest by the police. Nate is allowed to stay when the boys are returned to the orphanage, but Sam must be transported to prison due to his third strike. Sam takes advantage of the brothers' brief time alone to bid farewell to flee. Yet, before he departs, he gives Nate his treasured ring to keep with him always and makes a vow to return for him later. As Sam leaves, Nate discovers an empty sheet of paper and his brother's lighter, which he uses to expose a note that Sam wrote with love-filled sentiments buried inside. Back in the present, Nate is now a New York bartender. He sees a beautiful young lady asking for a drink. Since it was his first job, Nate asked her to test him. Also, he pickpockets wealthy clients by approaching them and using illogical justifications, such as helping a young lady light her cigarette in order to steal her jewelry. Even though Nate's brother's lighter is no longer functioning effectively, he still carries it around with him. A guy named Sully comes up to Nate one night while he's shutting the pub and compliments him on his pickpocketing skills before inviting him to join him on an upcoming crucial operation. Sully stole the bracelet from Nate's pocket and left his card instead, so Nate tosses him out since he doesn't want to start a crime with a stranger. Nate visits the location on the card because he wants the bracelet back and enters the flat covertly by taking the doorman's keys. Nate is shocked to learn that Sully is holding the genuine Magellan's map while he waits for him. The journey had been paid for by the Moncada family, and the present heirs, Armando and his son Santiago, are still searching for that treasure. Nate inquires about the stories that claim the first trip had been organized to discover gold, and Sully confirms it is true. Sully discusses being Sam's friend and even shows Nate a photo of himself as an adult to persuade him to join him. Once they discovered Magellan's notebook, Sam reportedly vanished, and Sully hasn't even heard from him since. Sully tells out that seeking for the gold may also help Nate find Sam, and Nate nods in agreement because he hasn't spoken to Sam either. Nate continues to reject him, saying that the brother he once knew no longer exists. Nate lied to Sully when he stated his brother never got in touch with him again. As he gets back to his apartment, he opens a box he keeps with special memory, then finds letters from Sam. He also discovers the ring, and after re-putting it on, he determines that he does, in fact, want to do this. Nate and Sully get together to discuss their initial move. A cross that serves as a key for the room where they have concealed the gold will be offered at an upcoming auction as one of the antiques. They need to grab this key in order to begin because the legend claims there are two, however, Sully already has one. After requesting that Sully split the gold equally, Nate spends his downtime investigating the location of the auction and devising a strategy. Sully and Nate learn Santiago is also present the night of the auction when they spot a pricey red automobile. This means there will be fierce competition for the cross because Santiago believes the gold is his inheritance. Even yet, he has a mercenary commander Joe working for him who used to be Sully's partner, and taunts him whenever she sees him. Sully poses as a bidder just before the auction begins while Nate prepares the strategy. He moves in a suspicious manner, so Joe orders her men to watch him. Nate enters the electrical room. By placing his gum on the computerized lock, the goal is to turn off the electricity so that Sully can steal the cross in the dark. Nat sneaked into the control room and turned off the power. Sully is forced to begin bidding against Santiago even though he does not truly have the money for it, since Nate is taking too long. Nate is unfortunately discovered by Joe's men, and a conflict ensues. Nate decides to create a distraction by leaping on the ceiling lighting in the hallway after they exchange a few strikes before leaving the room. Sully flips his jacket around and poses as one of the employees as everyone starts to panic and the cross is being removed. Sully takes the cross away and claims he's in charge of delivering it to the vault while Nate is discovered and pursued by security, but Joe observes this and pursues him. Security spots them and tries to apprehend her for assaulting an auction employee just as she gets to corner him and threaten him with her knife. When Joe battles the guards, Sully is allowed to go with the crucifix. Nate is waiting for Sully when he returns to his vehicle, and they decide to travel to Spain together. Nate has access to the captain's diary while they are in the air, which supports the legend. Magellan discovered enormous quantities of gold in the Philippines, stashed it away in Barcelona, and then lied to the Moncada family about his findings. They will be able to locate the gold by using the hints in the diary, even if the primary hint so far is only a tree. They would meet Chloe Frazer, the owner of the other crucifix, when they got to Barcelona. Sully hoped Chloe would accompany them as they required both crucifixes in order to discover the prize. She doesn't want to work with Sully, though, who she views as dishonest and treacherous. After she departs, Nate realizes she took their cross with her and pursues her through Barcelona's streets. Nevertheless, Chloe is quicker and arrives at her car in time to make her getaway. She may have the crosses, but Nate and Sully don't give up and persuade her to remain by saying that they are the only ones who know where to go next because they have the diary, while she does not. Nate leads them to the location suggested by the clue now that everyone is cooperating. It's not a real tree, rather, it's a reference to a church with the word pine in its name and a tree in its emblem. Santiago approaches his father in the meanwhile. It has been reported that Armando will donate his riches, and he reveals that this is because their money has been stained with blood. Sully has been spotted about town, so Santiago leaves Sully's decision unaltered and goes to meet Joe to ask her to keep an eye on him. Returning to the group, they are pausing before moving on to the next stage of the plan. Chloe informs Sully that she believes Nate to be Sam's brother while Nate is in the kitchen. Chloe then insists that Sully tell him the truth about what transpired, but Sully just replies that he will do so later. The next day, Santiago makes another attempt to persuade his father not to part with the riches. Santiago follows Armando to his car and gives Joe the order to murder him since he won't comply.
Padre.
After it gets dark and the group enters the church acting like visitors, Nate is startled to see that one of Sam's postcards matches one being sold there. The group discovers a hidden button that Nate clicks to reveal a concealed artwork behind a statue of Mary by following the symbol and inscriptions engraved on the floor and walls. The altar reveals the keyholes for the crosses when Nate flips it over and displays an image of hell. The darts almost kill Nate and Chloe as they use the keys to spin the machine clockwise first. Fortunately, they avoid the danger just in time, and their second attempt, going clockwise, ultimately allows them to reach a secret tunnel. According to the journal, one cross must remain in heaven and the other in hell, so Nate and Chloe carry one cross into the tunnel while Sully holds the other while remaining outside. Nate installs a tracker on Sully's phone so that he would know where to go next. Sully can now monitor their movements without realizing that Joe is also watching him. Following a secret tunnel, Nate and Chloe arrive to a nightclub where Joe's men are also present. The two sneak across the floor and make it to the bar where Nate attempts to ignite a fire with Sam's lighter while pretending to be a couple dancing. They now have the necessary diversion to work on the riddle etched into the wall behind the bar after Chloe begins it for him when it fails once more. Nevertheless, Joe's men discover them, leading Nate to engage them in combat until Chloe ultimately discovers another keyhole that she opens with the cross. When it closes once more, a brand new hidden tunnel opens up in front of them, allowing the pair to flee while Joe's men remain behind. After the two use the key on the door, a chamber starts to fill with water. The tunnel leads the two to a hidden entrance beneath a fountain. To save them, Sully must use the cross on the hole above the earth, but the keyhole is concealed by a thick glass covering. Joe appears to try to take the cross, and a scuffle starts as he starts to work on shattering the glass. Joe initially looks to have the upper hand, but Sully quickly flips the situation and tosses Joe into the glass, ultimately shattering it. Sully then secures the cross over the keyhole and unlocks the hidden door to allow the pair to flee, but only Nate emerges. Nate returns to get Chloe after noticing that she has fallen unconscious underwater. As they both surface, Chloe is startled to realize that she has been aided rather than backstabbed. They enter a Roman antechamber through this entrance, where Chloe ignites a torch when Nate's lighter malfunctions once more. Sully may see them through a drainage grill on the roadway in this chamber, which is also underground. Also, he discovers a message engraved on a rock that says both keys must be used together to open the next door. As a result, Sully tosses his key through the grill to the pair. After Nate assembles the crosses, he is able to unlock another enigmatic door that leads to a Roman warehouse. The crew initially believes they have found the gold because there are 3 enormous urns there. But they have really discovered salt. The urns unexpectedly crack as they examine them, allowing them to discover a map among the salt. Nate makes a note of a path that connects Spain to the East Indies, but before he can consider the options, Chloe pulls a revolver and orders him to give her the map. Nate tries to strike a bargain with her, but Chloe just reminds him that he is unaware of the entire circumstances behind Sam's disappearance before putting him to sleep and escaping with the map. A little while later, Sully wakes up Nate, who demands to hear the truth. Sam merely left, not ghosting him, says Sully. Together, they arrived at the captain's grave and discovered the logbook, but as they were leaving, Jo and her soldiers assaulted them, and Sam was wounded. Sam might have provided Nate with some of the missing clues he was lacking to find the gold, and Nate knows Sully fled and left Sam there to perish. This is the sole reason Sam recruited Nate. Nate dissolves their alliance and departs after accusing Sully of being avaricious and self-centered. Later, when Sully tries to convince Nate to return, Nate only agrees because he has been contemplating the postcards and has made up his mind that he wants to complete the task his brother began. When Jo goes to tell Santiago what occurred, she finds that Chloe is also employed by him. She will now be in charge of the surgery because she has had greater success, which enraged Jo. At his exclusive airport, Santiago and his staff prepare everything, including his favorite red automobile, which Nate and Sully use as an opportunity to enter by hiding in the trunk.
All right, come on, they're getting ready to go.
Santiago begins to speak about how his family had been deceived and how he will restore their dignity after examining the chart and determining their course of action. But Jo cuts him short by murdering him. Nate and Sully seize the opportunity to sneak around and retrieve the map as Jo and her men pursue Chloe after she becomes alarmed and attempts to flee. Nevertheless, when they reach the cargo compartment, Nate can't help but approach Jo and ask her whether she indeed killed Sam. The goal was to also grab several parachutes and jump out of the plane. When the cargo is thrown off the plane and Nate gets into a battle with the guys, Sully leaps away with the parachute, setting the scene for the rest of the narrative. Chloe is discovered by Jo's men, who then engage her in a gun battle, making it impossible for her to use a parachute to flee. Nate climbs back inside, but Chloe chooses to jump in the automobile and drive it off the aircraft, forcing Nate out once more. She is also the one who grabs his hand, directs him to one of the tumbling freight boxes, drops on top of it, opens the parachute, and they are able to land safely in the midst of the sea thanks to her. The two float around for a bit before the waves ultimately carry them to the Philippines, where they use Sully's credit card to check into a hotel.
Thank you.
Nate discovers the map doesn't exactly show where to find the treasure using Sam's postcards when Chloe prints a map that matches the real one's proportions. Sam tried to leave Nate the final piece of information, proving Sully's assertion, so Nate and Chloe spend the evening deciphering his texts. After a time, Chloe grows weary and goes to bed, but Nate doesn't give up. This ultimately works to his advantage since he realizes he hasn't employed the oldest tactic in Sam's book. The lighter is still inoperative, so Nate uses a candle to reveal a secret message on a postcard telling him to use the crosses as a compass. When Nate eventually finds the location of the gold, he does just that and records the coordinates on a piece of paper before going to bed. The following morning, Chloe wakes up first and discovers the paper with the coordinates before Jo and her men arrive at the location. Nate wakes up alone, but she purposefully left the wrong location since she already knew Chloe would betray him. She chooses to take the letter with her and leave Nate alone. Nate drives a speedboat to the cave indicated by the coordinates, unknowing that Jo notices him from a distance while gazing in the incorrect direction. Nate swims down an underwater passage within this cave and emerges inside another cave where both of Magellan's ships have been buried for all these years. Sully appears in the cave as Nate discovers the gold, owing to the tracker he still has on his phone.
Sophia, remember?
He assures Nate that Sam would be proud of him, but before they can continue, Jo and her men arrive, forcing the couple to hide inside a concealed compartment.
I'm not going in there.
Jo's team airlifts the entire ships through a hole on top of the cave with the aid of 2 helicopters, so Nate and Sully emerge from their hiding position to get as much money as possible while defending themselves with a knife and a sword. Then they walk upstairs and attack the crew until every guy is thrown from the ship. Sully can now climb the chains that tie the ship together and reach the helicopter, where he pushes off the guys he finds and takes control of the chopper to fly away from Jo, who is on the other ship. Jo instructs her pilot to follow Sully, leading her spacecraft to collide with the other. Her men storm Nate's ship and start fighting, so Nate knocks them up and steals some firearms from them. He also discovers some gunpowder laying about. Sully pilots the helicopter into a tight channel between cliffs to avoid the chaser, but Joe is waiting for him at the opposite end, so he must do a daring maneuver to avoid colliding with them. But this is only a momentary detour. Joe and her ship are still pursuing them, prompting Nate to take drastic measures. Nate places a ball into the ship's cannon with the gunpowder he obtained, and after a few failed attempts, he manages to make Sam's lighter work and shoots the cannon towards the other helicopter. Joe jumps off the ship before it collides with a hill, the chopper on fire. Nate and Sully believe they have won, but Joe has hopped aboard their ship and is currently releasing the anchor to prevent them from departing. It's clear that the ship won't last long, and Joe and Nate trade punches before Nate starts climbing the cables to reach the helicopter. Sully resolves to finally alter his ways when he sees Joe approaching Nate and throws his bag of gold at her, forcing her to tumble into the water. Sully then assists Nate in getting into the helicopter just as the shackles finally snap and the ship crashes on top of Joe, killing her. The ship floats for a few seconds before sinking, and Nate thinks they can dive for wealth later, but that won't be possible. Philippine naval troops are coming, and the treasure will land up in the hands of their government. Sully chuckles as the couple fly away when he sees Chloe attempting to pursue them in a speedboat, but he also regrets the lack of wealth. Nate, on the other hand, surprises him by revealing the gold he's managed to conceal in his jeans. Despite the fact that they didn't earn much gold, Nat and Sully were eager to embark on their next journey. Meanwhile, in a remote jail, Sam sends Nate another postcard warning him to keep an eye on him. Months later, Nate meets with an agent working for a guy named Roman, who wants to trade his ring for a Nazi map. The agent attempts to betray Nate by stealing both the ring and the map, but Sully appears and causes a distraction, allowing Nate to retrieve both objects.
And I got what I...
As the duo leaves together, they're caught by an unseen person.
Oh, crap.
If you enjoyed this video, don't be shy to hit the like button. It would be best if you watched the whole movie. Thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe for more videos like this.
It's been 5 years.